Hey guys, Brent here from BYOTools, aka BYOT. Thank you for joining me, and today it is my first ever large-scale epoxy pour onto wood, and it turned out quite amazing. So if you want to learn how to change wood from this to this, keep on watching. Let's get started. Now this is the wood that I picked up at a second-hand used store, and as you can see, it is in some desperate need of some repairs. So there is quite a large crack in this board, and I was thinking about just ripping it off, but inevitably I wanted to keep it intact, so I actually utilized some glue, a ratchet strap, and a few clamps, and presto changeo, there you go, done. If it only was that easy, yeah. No, it's not easy, but guess what? A planer does make life a little bit easier, and for this project I am working with a DeWalt planer that I actually used in BYOT number 44, so if you haven't already, please check that one out. Now step number one when utilizing a planer is bring it down to the proper height. You want to make sure you are measuring your board thickness first, and then proceeding to lowering it at the proper level. Now the beauty of a planer really does make life a lot easier when it comes to just milling something down and turning a rough looking finish into something extremely beautiful in a very short amount of time. However, you don't get a perfect finish the very first time. You do have to put the piece of wood through the planer a number of times to mill it down to the proper height, as well as a nice fluid finish over the entire piece. Also note to self, I haven't used planers very often, is that they don't make your board straight. Yes, if there is a warp to your board, guess what? It's not correcting the warp, it's just making a nice finish over the entire warp. We'll be fixing that later, trust me. Now after you have planed down both sides, it's time to give some love to your edges, because the edges need love too. Yes, they do. I'm using a standard wood scraper to scrape off all the excess bark, and then just taking some sandpaper and sanding down the sides. Now these edges don't have to be perfectly smooth and amazing, but know that you do want to knock off all the loose debris off the edges, because if you don't, then it might fall into the epoxy when we actually pour the epoxy in the middle. Now I'm creating a river table out of this board, so all I need is a tape measure, a pencil, and a string line to make a perfect line down the center of this board. Then once I have that, I find a board that I know for sure is straight, take that, and use it as a guide for my skill saw as I'm cutting it down the center. Now I do 2 passes on my skill saw because in all honesty, it's a pretty thick board and I don't want to overload my skill saw on the first pass. So easy enough, 2 passes, look at that. Boom. Now I want to cut down the ends slightly because I want to make sure it fits into my mold that I'm creating, as well as making sure that both sides are even and flush. Now if you've done any type of research on these type of projects, you know a lot of people utilize tuck tape or some type of variance in tape on the surface that they apply because they don't want the resin to stick to the surface. I am actually utilizing a floor protecting material that is a perfect width and a perfect type of product for this project. Now, again, this is my first time doing one of these projects, so inevitably it is a learning process, but guess what? I can tell you for sure it worked out like a charm in the end. Yes. And saved me some time and money. And who doesn't love that, right? Those fat cats in Washington. Yeah, those fat cats. Where did that come from, by the way? What are fat cats and what do they have to do with fat cats in Washington? Anyways, I cut down some end panels and then apply some tape to the surface. I then pre-drill some holes and then screw them into position. Now you definitely want to pre-drill your holes because this is just a melamine product with particle board, and guess what? It will definitely crack on you if you don't pre-drill your holes, so please do so. I measure out 14 inches on both sides and make a mark just to make sure that I have the same width of board on both ends. Applying a clamp at the ends definitely made life a little bit easier just because the board itself did not move around on you at all. I installed the board vertically on one end, as you can see, just due to the fact that I didn't want to cut this board shorter than what it already was because I plan on using it for bigger, larger projects in the very near future. Now if the formwork is complete, go ahead and proceed to removing the boards, vacuum out any of the dust particles or sawdust that you have potentially lying inside, and then cover the edges with tape. Now I'm covering all the edges to make sure that no epoxy spills out anywhere. This is just a nice precaution in order to ensure that I'm not going to have a mess later on. Now right before I place the boards back into the form, I actually wiped them down with some mineral spirits just to make sure that they were completely dust free, or at least as much as possible at this point. At this point, go ahead and proceed to clamping the board down to your form, ensuring that you have a nice tight seal between the board and the form in order to avoid any spillage of epoxy in between. Now comes time for the fun part, the epoxy pour. And for this project, I am actually using a product called Mass. And in all honesty and full disclosure, I would not recommend this product for this type of pour. It's a thicker pour, and in all honesty, when I researched this product, it looked like it was utilized for larger pours, but it is not. It's supposed to be used for thin tabletop pours, not thick pours like this. But with that being said, I did use it and it did work out. So it's just a very thick, viscous product compared to what I've seen on other products such as EPOXY. But I did utilize the EPOXY pigment, which does look amazing. And let's just be honest, I could watch pouring epoxy onto wood for days. Yeah, days. Something about it is just so satisfying, and I don't know what it is, but inevitably I love it, and hopefully you guys too. Just know I'll be using a different type of epoxy on my next wood epoxy project. And this is what it's all about. It's all about learning and learning from a channel that I love producing, and sometimes you have to learn from mistakes. Personal growth 101, right? Yeah. After I let the epoxy sit for approximately 5 minutes, I then take my trusty blowtorch and pop all the air bubbles that have come up to the top of the surface. Now these are rising due to gravity obviously, and all you need is a bit of heat from a blowtorch or a heat gun. Now I wanted to add a bit of variance in color to the epoxy, which is why I mixed up a secondary small batch of black epoxy. I then proceeded to pour it throughout the surface and then mix it and swirl it about. Yes, swirl it about on the surface itself until inevitably I liked the design and overall look. It does take a bit of time and a bit of patience just to make sure you have it exactly the way you want it, as well as thoroughly mixed through. But in the end, I'd say it turned out quite well. Yeah. After you're done applying it, all you have to do is just sit back and look at all the little bubbles coming to the surface. Yeah, you still have to apply some heat to the surface every so often just to try and pop all the air bubbles as much as possible. But this is just satisfying, and I love playing with fire, so it's a win-win for me. Yeah. Now I waited approximately 72 hours for the epoxy to fully harden, and then I removed all my clamps and my formwork and hoped that the board would be easily removable from the form. And luckily for me, all the dividends was paid off in full because it just popped right out. Yeah, it was that easy. Just pop. Now remember earlier in the video when I was explaining the fact that a planer does not straighten warp boards? Yeah, well this is where this comes in. I'm actually making a router sled. Yes, a router sled that I made for $20, and all I needed was 3 cuts and some epoxy. It was pretty easy and well worth the effort. So I actually just took aluminum L metal, cut it in half, then I cut 2 pieces of 2x2, applied some 5-minute epoxy to it, placed it, clamped it, and then put a couple fasteners on the ends just for good support. Now that my router is just going to be riding along the sled on top of the surface, cutting the top of the wood itself in order to plane it down flat and straight. Now to make sure that it's above the wood, I grabbed a couple miscellaneous pieces of wood and metal rails in order to make sure that it was the proper height. Now I knew for certain that these rails were very straight products, which inevitably made it very easy to allow the sled to slide across evenly and consistently. Now in my router, I have a 1-inch flat routing bit, and this is specifically perfectly in line with what I'm doing for the flattening purposes of the wood itself. It goes over the wood evenly and consistently throughout the entire process of flattening out the material. Now, there are larger bits, but they're generally used for 1/2-inch thick shanks, and I'm only working with a 1/4-inch thick shank. Sorry, ladies. Now that's fine, especially with the fact that I don't want to overwork my router, because the key of the game when working with routers is safety, and we will be discussing safety a bit more extensively at the end of this video. Trust me. You're going to want to watch the outtakes on this one. Yeah. Now as you finish one side, all you have to do once you're done with that side is flip it over, because you have a nice flat even surface, and proceed to the following side. Now just know that I am using a plunge router, and this just allows you to plunge evenly the correct depth that you need. You can always adjust the depth if need be, but that is why I'm using this type of router. Now at this point we do have a beautiful flat board, but there are a few ridges along the way due to the router that we used. Luckily for us, we're easily able to knock them down with a orbital sander. I'm starting at an 80 grit and then working my way up to 220. Now I always stress taking your time with the sanding process, because it's one of the most vital processes that you can ever have when working with wood. If you're not meticulous about the sanding process, then your project might just look average, and we're not working for average, we're working for greatness. That's why we're putting so much love and energy into this project, right? Yeah. Now with that being said, you can work smarter, sometimes not harder. Inevitably at the back side of the board where it's not going to be very noticeable, I do utilize a grinding wheel with a sanding disc just to knock down a bit of those rough marks much quicker and much easier. And then of course I finished off with my orbital sander. I mean, come on, I'm not a psychopath, right? No. After the sanding process is taken care of and done with, I then take some mineral spirits and wipe off all the excess dust and debris off the top and the bottom of the board. At this point in time, there's a couple large cracks that I just decided I wanted to fill instead of leaving wide open, so I took my hot glue gun, made a dam with hot glue, and then proceeded to pour epoxy into the crack. The hot glue firms up almost instantaneously and creates a perfect dam for the epoxy to lay in. That way, it can make its way into all those small little crevices, as well as make sure that it's not getting everywhere. Now all you have to do is wait for it to dry, then take your scraper and start scraping away. Now remember, when you're using a scraper with the blades itself, there are two sides of the scraper. There's one that is slightly ovaled and one that is flat. Make sure you're using the flat side, because if you're not using the other side, you might be digging in unevenly into your wood. Using the flat side will allow you to dig in evenly and consistently, so you're not marring up the wood and creating odd or uneven depressions. Now, as you're removing material with your scraper, your shavings should be looking something like this: large slices. Sometimes you can't do anything about it, but inevitably you should strive for this. Then, once you're done, knock it down with a sander and proceed to finishing. Yes. Now, due to the fact that this board is going to be more of a floating shelf, I want to make sure that it's perfectly straight, because it's going to be going on a very straight wall. And as I noticed, one of the edges was not flat, that was going to be going up against the drywall. So inevitably, to combat that, I adhered a piece of trim that I knew was extremely straight, and then used that as a guide to push it against the table saw. That way I had a perfect edge, and then I could cut both sides on the table saw to ensure that I had a perfectly straight cut. Then after that, it was extremely easy to remove the trim as well as the glue on the board, and did not mark up the board at all either. So, win-win. With my chop saw, I cut about a 10-degree angle on both sides just to give the board a bit more character. You obviously don't need to do this, and obviously this board doesn't really need any more character than it already has, but guess what? Want to add a little bit more, right? Yeah. After I'm done with all of my cuts, I then proceed to taking my router with a roundover bit and just rounding off all the edges of the board. This has just a nice clean, even look. The only edges that I don't round over is the edge that's going to be going against the wall. Once I have all my edges routed, I then take my sander and just sand off, making sure that every single edge is perfectly smooth and symmetrical. At this point in time, I want to make sure and figure out exactly where my hole placement is going to be for my shelf supports. Now, with this shelf, there's a number of different hardware items I could be utilizing to support it, but I want to have it fully concealed with zero hardware visible, which is why I'm using these. Now, these are solid steel bolts that I'll be leaving a link in the description box below on where to find them. They protrude 5 inches away from the wall, which gives you great support, especially when you're installing multiple at a time. I first have to pre-drill my holes, and I use a guide in order to make sure that I'm going perfectly horizontally straight into the drywall and studs. This way, I can guarantee that when drilling holes into the board, they will line up perfectly. This is a very important step, so make sure you take your time. Yes, relax and take your time at this moment. I know at this point the board is done, so inevitably this should be the easy part, right? Well, it is pretty easy, but you want to make sure you take your due diligence, because if you don't do this correctly, nothing's going to turn out when it actually comes time to installing the board onto the wall. Now, the board is approximately 6 feet long, which worked out quite perfectly with this type of application because I was going from stud to stud and I was able to nail 5 support rods in the correct locations. Now, you want as many support rods as humanly possible, especially with a board this size, just because there is some weight to it and you want to make sure the rods have plenty of strength to accommodate it. Now, I center the board on the support bars themselves, and that way I can easily determine exactly where the rod placement is going to be in conjunction with the board. Now, once I have those located in place, all I have to do is bring the board back to my shop, trace the lines down onto the back end of the board, then get my center line, and then it's time to start drilling. Now, I flip the board onto its edge and then start drilling the holes vertically. It's a bit easier this way, especially with the guide that I used previously on the walls. Now, once I'm fully completed with all the drilling and all the sanding, I then take some mineral spirits and wipe off any excess dust particles that I may find. Once it's dry, it's time to finally finish this bad boy. And as for finish, we are using a 2-part Rubio Monocoat Oil Plus 2C finish. Yeah, that was quite the mouthful. But this is a pure finish, and it is actually a 2-part, like I said, 2-part monocoat. This means you only have to apply it once, and the fact that it is a 2-part system means that it is very durable. And in all honesty, I found out about this finish on Instagram, no less. I follow a few woodworkers on Instagram, and this finish works miracles on wood products, especially Black American Walnut. I must say so myself. Say so myself? Yeah, that's what I was going with. I apply small amounts of finish at a time, and then using a sweeping technique, I finish the entire board with a plastic rigid spreader, making sure I get all surfaces completely covered in finish. Now, this is a monocoat, meaning that I only need to apply 1 layer of finish to this entire board, which is amazing, since other finishes I've had to work with worked and looked amazing, but I did have to apply 3 to 4 to 5 coats. I let the finish sit on the board itself for approximately 5 to 10 minutes, and then just took a clean, dry cloth and wiped off all the excess. Now, don't skip all this step, because at this step, you want to make sure you have a beautifully soft, silky smooth finish on this beautiful piece of wood. Now let's get this thing installed. Now, this is where the measurements really come into play, because if you did it right, it slides right in. And look at that. Wow, oh wow, that is one beautiful, sexy beast of a floating shelf. I mean, come on, who wouldn't love this? There was a lot of time and love spent into this project, and it paid off in dividends. Oh yeah. And there you have it, episode number 46 of BYOT done. That was quite the long journey from start to finish, and learned a lot along the way, but it turned out incredible, and I can't wait for my next project. But in any case, thank you for watching. Please like this video, please subscribe to this channel, and please check out my Instagram feed. I post it weekly. In any case, thank you for your time, and catch you next time. Oh, and if you don't like blood, you probably shouldn't watch the outtake. Just note to self. Yeah. You know the old adage, always cut away from you? Yeah, I tend to do that most of the time, but sometimes not so much. And this one was the not so much kind of time. Yeah, definitely hit myself pretty good on the finger there and basically just sliced my finger in half. But I only needed 3 stitches and it was a very clean cut since it was a very fresh blade. So just remember everyone, make sure you're cutting away from yourself when using very sharp blades.